Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 113. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being with us here this Friday show. Dave, baseball's back. The Pirates are terrible, so baseball is really, truly back now.
Yeah, what a day yesterday. They signed that young kid to that mega contract, and in the first inning, he hurts his has some sort of, I guess, forearm spasm or something like that, has to leave the game, and then didn't you have a stat after that one? The largest opening day loss in, was it 100 years?
Yeah, it's their worst opening day loss since 1922, also to the Cardinals. So every 100 years, they lose by 9 runs opening day to the St. Louis Cardinals.
Thank God I won't be around for the next one. Yeah, look, are they going to hit 68 wins this year?
I had them at 65, so I'm just going to say no.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Pittsburgh sports had a rough day yesterday. The Pirates didn't score any runs. All of them had 0. The Pirates, the Penguins, and the Steelers had 0 as well. So I don't know. Move the teams to Albuquerque, I guess, right?
I guess so. A little bit later in the show, very similar to what our Wednesday show had with Josh and Tom. For Friday, for today's show, we'll have Jonathan Heitritter and Tyler Wise, and on the show a little bit later to talk NFL draft, to talk quarterback, to talk just the draft at large, get their thoughts and opinions. So excited to hear from those guys in a little bit. But Dave, let's start just you and I on some news that came in last night. We know Pittsburgh's still searching for a starting strong safety. We know Tyrann Mathieu's been talking to some teams, the Saints, the Eagles. He's still available. So is Terrell Edmunds. But reportedly, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Pittsburgh may attempt to sign veteran safety Kareem Jackson, who'd re-up with Denver on a 1-year deal worth about $5 million. So surprising name in the fold there, because Jackson's 34 years old and certainly had not been reported until after the Jackson re-signing with Denver had occurred. But apparently there was a push to sign Kareem Jackson.
Yeah, they must have not Googled him on Wikipedia or something, right? To have a player, he'll turn, 34, I think, in a few days from now. So age does not seem to be a matter when it comes to filling this strong safety spot and all. And Jackson, obviously a Alabama product, much like Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now he's been in the league for obviously quite a while, so I don't think Minkah was even close to getting into the Alabama program when Kareem Jackson was there. But a guy that's kind of in Kareem Jackson has kind of reinvented himself over the years, right? Came into the league, I think, as a corner, and then switched to safety, and I think last couple of years has been a safety for the Broncos, returning to them. Sounds like 1-year deal worth up to $5 million. So as we've talked several times, the Steelers aren't likely to do 1-year deals when you get over that $3.5 million mark. My best guess, Alex, is they probably went after Kareem Jackson with the same contract that they went after, or that they gave to Akil Witherspoon and Levi Wallace. And that's 2 years, $8 million. Take it or leave it. And I bet Jackson was wanting a 1-year deal, and that's probably why, and probably wanted a chance to earn a little bit more than maybe what the Steelers were offering him per year. And so thus he returns to Denver on a $5 million deal. Now, what does all this mean? Well, I think it means that the Steelers are honestly looking for a strong safety, a veteran strong safety, or a safety with some good playing experience to at least hold the fort down at the start of the 2022 season, and probably a little bit longer into it. I still think this team's going to draft a strong safety type, probably in the first 3 rounds of this year's draft. But it would be nice to not have to be able to force that kid on the field unless, he proves he's worthy of it there. So as we continue on toward the draft here, There are a bunch of 30-year-old, over 30 veteran safeties. I haven't been paying them too much mind because of the whole 30-year-old aspect of it here, but there are a few others out there that are floating around, and obviously Tyrann Mathieu still unsigned. Terrell Edmonds is still unsigned as well too. So I'm betting within, by the time the draft rolls around, they'll have another strong safety type in the fold here.
Sure, they're going to sign somebody. They won't go into the draft with a complete void at strong safety like they have right now. Who that guy will be, what veteran name will that be? Obviously, there's Matthew. We'll see when that shoe drops. It feels like it might be happening sometime maybe early next week, but nobody really knows. And then Terrell Edmonds is a potential fallback option, and maybe some other veteran guy as plan B or plan C. But certainly, assuming they don't sign Matthew, this team will likely be in position to draft a safety potentially as early as round 1, but more likely rounds 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there. It's a good safety class overall in this draft. There's a lot of talented names, versatile guys, athletic players. We'll talk about a couple today. So if they want a safety in the draft, and they should be able to find some talent.
Absolutely. And I think you wrote up yesterday, Tyrann Mathieu had the ever impressive Zoom meeting with the Eagles. Is that correct?
Yes, had a virtual meeting with Philadelphia. A further report from NFL Network said the Eagles looking to get him at the right price. So we don't know exactly what that means, but the Saints, Eagles have entered the mix pretty heavily for Tyrann Mathieu.
All right. The right price, huh? I bet the Steelers are in that category as well, too.
I bet they are. So we'll keep you updated there. But yeah, that Jackson news was surprising, just given a 34-year-old safety, generally not the type of guy Pittsburgh goes after. Melvin Ingram was surprising enough last year on a one-year deal. He's an edge guy, close to the line of scrimmage. The lack of athleticism probably is a little less of a factor in terms of just playing in open spaces the way that a safety would. But ultimately, Jackson staying in Denver. Dave, speaking of safeties, we talked about some of the pre-draft visitors that came in earlier this week, including Kyle Hamilton. He'll come in April 19th, but that news was reported earlier this week. A couple more safeties making their way to Pittsburgh. Two of them are Nolan Turner from Clemson. Should be coming in today, actually, here on Friday. I believe Sam Howell, the quarterback from UNC, coming in as well. And also Joey Blunt, safety from Virginia. Don't know the date of that pre-draft visit, but he's scheduled to come in as well. So at this point, I'll run through the names of the most recent pre-draft visit names that are now known. And we have a pretty good list here built up so far. It's Justin Skalski from Clemson, Nolan Turner, the safety from Clemson, Joey Blunt, the safety from Virginia, Eric Johnson, defensive lineman from Missouri State, Mark Robinson, linebacker from Ole Miss, and Kurt Heinisch, defensive lineman from Notre Dame. He's a Central Catholic grad, so he's considered a local visit, does not count against that 30 allotted visit. So a couple of more day 3 type, undrafted type of names added to this list, Dave.
Boy, a bunch of quarterbacks, a bunch of safeties, and a bunch of linebackers, right?
Yeah, and there's a pretty clear trend between the visitors. It's been off-ball linebacker, it's been safety, it's been quarterback.
And I think you took a deeper dive this morning, by the way, on SteelersDepot.com on Joey Blunt. And I think I remember, didn't his father play at, I think his father played at Virginia as well, too. This kid, kind of impressed you on the tape, did he not?
He did. And yeah, no relation to Mel Blunt. His dad, though, did play football. Tony Blunt, you're right, safety at Virginia, got drafted by the Giants in 1990 in the 5th round, played 1 year with them. So there are some football bloodlines. Just thought of the big cowboy hat variety. But yeah, Blunt's tape was really good. I kept watching this guy going, how is this guy projected to be, a late day 3 undrafted type of dude? He tested, fantastically. His RAS score is, I think, over 9, ran 4.45, had great, vertical and broad jumps and all those kinds of things. But his tape was excellent. He's physical. He's downhill. He fills the alley. He can cover. He's got good ball skills, good production. Leadership was a really important, the quarterback of that defense that Virginia head coach Bronco Mendenhall talked about. The biggest knock on Blunt to me, there's a little bit of hip stiffness reflected in his agility times, but he's got a pretty lengthy injury history. He's just kind of struggled to consistently stay healthy, battled injuries on off the field. This past year, missed half of 2020 with an injury that I could not determine what it was. He's had some ankle surgeries and things like that. So there's a medical component to it that is probably pushing him down. But from a pure tape perspective, to me, this guy's a really athletic, physical, high energy safety that I think would fit well in Pittsburgh.
And with him being from the Virginia area, I bet Mike Tomlin's already peeked in on him a time or two.
Yeah, I bet. I think he's originally from Atlanta, I want to say, but obviously going to Virginia. So yeah, I think, obviously to bring him in for a visit, so they're going to know him even better. But I'm guessing that really strong workout that he had probably made Pittsburgh and other teams kind of circle back to Blunt and say, let's take a longer look at this guy.
All right, interesting there, and he's probably going to be a later round guy, you think, or potentially undrafted.
That's the projections right now. I imagine, though, that workout that he had, that really impressive, pro day workout, is going to push him up some. So I think, to me, I would draft him. I put a third-round grade on this guy from a pure tape perspective. Now, there's the medical, component that might knock him down some. But to me, he's easily a draftable candidate. So it's a strong safety class, but I think he will get drafted probably somewhere, maybe 5th round and back. But the tape is excellent.
I tell you, to hear that coach talk about him, get a kind of a Cam Sutton feel for him as far as maybe awareness and getting people lined up. That coach said when he's on the field, the other 10 seem to play better and be lined up in the right spots there. So the Steelers love those kind of guys, right? And that's just another plus for him there. What kind of injuries did you say? It was shoulder?
Yeah, he had a collarbone issue in 2021. It was a North Carolina game. They thought he broke it. He didn't, luckily. He didn't miss the next game. He just left a bunch of games in 2021, the Miami game, the North Carolina game. In 2020, I could not find for the life of me what the injury was. He missed half the year. He came back, so maybe I could do some more research on that. And then he had ankle surgery at the end of 2018 into 2019. Just had a bunch of stuff that has kind of plagued him and prevented him from playing as much as he should have.
All right. I'm going to maybe get into a little bit deeper into his tape this weekend then.
And then Nolan Turner, the other safety from Clemson, I'll have a report on him up Saturday. Kind of the opposite. He's smaller. He doesn't have a great wingspan. He falls off tackles a lot. He is a decently explosive guy. He does want to be physical, ton of experience. He's played 65 games for the Tigers, started 25 of them. But to me, I did not put a draftable grade on Turner. He could be a decent special teams player, but not enough there to draft.
Doesn't he have an NFL? Is he the one with the NFL bloodline too?
I think it's, I don't think so. I didn't come across that. I don't believe.
Okay.
Wait. Yeah, he did. Kevin Turner, his father, fullback for the Patriots, played 8 years. I'm sorry, I apologize. He does have NFL bloodlines. His dad passed away in 2016, unfortunately, due to ALS, which is apparently was brought on by CTE. Doctors determined after his passing. But yeah, he does have a dad that played the NFL.
Okay.
And then the other guy, Skowski, I think.
Turner's a little bit older too, isn't he?
Yeah, he'll be 25 this year. He started his college days in 2016. It's an older draft class in general because of all the COVID eligibility guys going back. You got a ton of super seniors this year, but Turner even older than the kind of typical age, 23, 24-year-old in this class. He'll be 25 later this year. But yeah, I did not put a draftable grade on him. Skowski, kind of a special team.
259 total tackles for that Turner kid. That's very Tyler Matakevich, right?
Yeah, just in the sense of like the volume of tackles. Yeah. And I know tackles can be weird. Different sites say different things. I think even Clemson's on their own bio says, different stats are different based on kind of what you look at, whether it's coaches or official game scores and things like that. But yeah, undrafted guy to me, but he'll visit, I think, again today as well. And then Eric Johnson, about a small school kid. Eric Johnson, Missouri State, coming in April 18th. Don't know a ton about him. Good size, really good length, 34-inch arms, Senior Bowl guy. I think had a sack in what game? The
NFLPA Bowl.
NFLPA. Okay, yeah, a nice little stunt ran over the left tackle. So interesting when Pittsburgh brings in the small school guys.
Eric Johnson, not a lot of Missouri State tape floating around out there, I found. But got the height, that kind of height and build that the Steelers look for, and obviously being an all-star game players definitely got the Steelers' eye on that. That's probably one of the reasons they're bringing him in, probably trying to learn a little bit more about him from that aspect of it. And the other guy that you mentioned, I think Mark Robinson, right? I did a write-up on him. Converted run, went I think recruited as a running back at Ole Miss, and then switched to linebacker his final season, and seemed to play that role pretty good. So, but with him, you're talking about maybe another later round, potentially undrafted type in Mark Robinson.
And then on Heinisch, and again, local visits, it does not count. But what's the word on Kurt Heinisch's game or story?
Nose tackle, defensive tackle type, probably going to be another one of those priority, undrafted free agent types and all like that. I mean, if he gets drafted, it's probably going to be 7th round overall. Team captain though, and blue collar, and the kind of guy that, if he can make the squad, I think would help you in, especially in the locker room there. So, but I just think overall he's probably going to be an undrafted product here.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like as well. So that's the pre-draft visit list. We're up to almost 15 names. We're almost, I think, half the list right now.
Yeah, and I guess the Steelers aren't announcing them, are they?
It doesn't appear that way, but luckily other reporters are. And as you mentioned, Instagram account and social media is kind of doing the sleuthing for us. So we're making it work.
Hopefully we'll get to 30. Hopefully we find all 30.
Yeah, that'd be great. Dave, I know last week or several days ago, it was reported that Mitch Trubisky was going to have a couple of Steelers to his Florida home for some offseason hangout and workout. And it appears we know some of those names, and some of those names were reported in that initial report. I think it was Mason and Najee and Haskins were all, reported to be invited. We know Chase Claypool's down in Florida as well. So I'm assuming he's going to be hanging out at the Trubisky house. And so good to see those guys get together for an April get together.
Yeah, and I used some things that I learned in the Kozora PI junior detective program, and was able to super sleuth a couple extra names there. And obviously, I want to give a shout out to Xavier Rivas on the Twitter machine, XRIVAS 15 on Twitter. He evidently saw Najee post something, I think, on the Snapchat video. And I guess Xavier lives down there in South Florida. He ran out to the FIU or FAU, Florida Atlantic University out there, and that's evidently where they were at, and caught a pretty good glimpse of the guys out there. And he told me, and Chase Claypool put on Instagram yesterday that he's in town. I don't think Chase made it in time for the workout yesterday, but I'm willing to bet that Chase is out there today. I found Xavier went on tell me I think Anthony Miller's out there working with them. Pat Freiermuth is down there working with them. New wide receiver Gunnar Olszewski is out there, it looks like, and he thought he saw Mika Fitzpatrick out there as well too. So I think Xavier might decide to take a run back down there later on this afternoon to see who he can find out there, and he promised me he'd report back to me and let me know who he found out there.
All right, good deal. Thank you, Xavier. Certainly appreciate the extra set of eyes. So yeah, good to see those guys work out. Nice to see Mitch kind of, Trubisky step up and get those guys together, or at least presumably kind of help get this ball going. So yeah, Trubisky trying to grab that leadership role, which is so important because again, the biggest concern, one of the biggest concerns for me offensively is just that lack of leadership. We talk about the depth chart and talent and stuff like that, and that's all well and good, but like, who are the leaders? Who are going to be the faces, the guys people look towards when things get tough this season? And someone has to step up and be that guy. Ben was always that central leader, that guy that just had that presence, and that's gone. And that's such an underrated aspect that's now gone.
Yeah, I think he told me Kendrick Green was out there as well too, and that would make sense because Kendrick Green's been working out, down in Florida with the Pouncey twins and all like that. So that would make sense there and all. So we'll see if Xavier has any new info to pass along to us later on this Friday.
All right, good deal. I think the last thing I want to get to before we talk to Jonathan and Tyler, the development here in the Brian Flores lawsuit. 2 more NFL coaches joining the Flores lawsuit. That is Steve Wilks and Ray Horton. Ray Horton, a former Steelers DB coach. He's not alleging anything against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Wilks is alleging that basically he did not get a fair shake and a fair opportunity in Arizona, lasting just 1 year there, going 3-13, and then getting fired, replaced by Cliff Kingsbury, basically saying that Kingsbury's gotten more of an opportunity to rebuild and reshape the Cardinals than Wilks did. And Horton's allegation is that the interview he did for the Titans head coach job in 2016 was a sham interview, that Mike Mularkey was already told he was going to get the job. And that has been corroborated by a podcast that Mularkey did and I think it was 2020, basically regretting how that whole scenario went down, and literally said it was a fake hiring process, that the Titans had told him that he was getting the job, and basically they were only interviewing other people, and Horton included, to fulfill the Rooney Rule mandate, which requires the interview of minority candidates. So Horton seems to have some real legs to stand on here. I don't know about Wilkes' claim. That might be tougher to prove, but Horton's allegation seems to have some serious evidence to back it up.
Yeah, with Malarkey saying what he had to say and having that, and I think they got some sort of statement on him since then, saying pretty much, I'm not quoting verbatim, I'm paraphrasing here, but I said what I said, and you have the info there. What you need there. So this is not looking good for the NFL, is it? And hasn't for a while when it comes to these type of things. And obviously this, the minority, process and hiring system, and all aspects of that was addressed once again at the league meetings just recently here in South Florida here. So they're going to have to find out. This is going to end up going to cost the league or teams not only some money here, I think, but maybe some jobs as well too, and who knows, maybe even some ownerships.
Yeah, certainly Miami's got the biggest risk there, because Flores also amended his complaint to note that he sent a memo to Dolphins team executives in 2019 saying that's when Stephen Ross told him, I'll give you $100,000 for each game you lose that season. And so if that is true, if that paper trail does exist, again, that's going to be a big piece of evidence working in Flores' favor. So we'll see where this thing goes. The lawsuit's still obviously going through the legal system. I think the NFL has tried to push for arbitration. I'm not entirely sure where all that stands right now, but yesterday was a certainly bad look for the NFL.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you and I don't do this because we enjoy talking about that aspect, the ugliness of it, but it's there and it's been around for a while, and that's why we have to talk about those things.
Sure, it's an important aspect, and again, this isn't for Wilkes. I'm not saying that he's wrong. I don't know what's true. I don't have any, obviously special insight there, but I just think from a, legal standpoint, from a what can you prove standpoint, Wilkes' claims are going to be a lot harder to prove, because they're just that's his opinion, and it might be right about it, but it's a harder thing to prove, like, that someone's been given more time and a fairer shake. That is hard to do from a legal standpoint. But from Horton's standpoint, when you have what Malarkey said, I mean, that is as clear cut as anything, honestly. Whenever Malarkey's literally calling it a fake process, and with what Horton's saying here, and obviously Malarkey got the job, I'm not sure what the defense would even be for the NFL in that scenario, other than just to say the Titans misuse and abuse the process and just try to put it on them, and not try to make it a bigger thing.
Yeah, because it is not looking good in the he said, she said department, is it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's even more than just like, it's not, if it was just Horton saying that'd be one thing. How do you prove that? But when you're Malarkey basically confirming what Horton's saying, I mean, that's a smoking gun if I've ever seen one.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. We'll keep you updated on that. I'm sure this process will still take weeks and months to maybe a year, who knows, to unfold. But that is the latest on the Brian Flores lawsuit. Anything else you, Dave, want to talk about? Any other news we haven't touched on that came across over the last couple of days?
I think we got the bulk of it, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so as well. So we'll take a break here and come back and talk NFL draft with Jonathan Heitritter and Tyler Wise. You can follow Jonathan on Twitter at J_Heights, HEITS, and be sure to follow Tyler on Twitter at TriggeredWise. So we'll take a pause here and come back with Jonathan and Tyler. And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And as promised, we have our second edition of the Draft Roundtable show. After having Josh and Tom on Wednesday, we have Jonathan Heitritter and Tyler Wise here on Friday's show, here to talk some more quarterbacks and just overall NFL draft thoughts, prospects, and rankings, analysis, etc. So good to have you guys back on the show. Jonathan, how you doing?
Doing good. Just kind of going through as much guys as I possibly can up until the draft. Just trying to get as much prospects profiled for the site here. Just trying to get as much film analysis done so I feel the best I possibly can once the draft rolls around.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. Should be able to hit 200 profiles for the site this year as a collective. So really excited about that. Tyler, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Tom and Josh were talking some trash in the DMs yesterday. So me and Jonathan.
I love it.
To live up to. That's the goal for today.
Unfortunately, you guys cheated and listen and kind of know what to expect. So I might twist it up a little bit on you this time. But here's the best thing about it is we got 4 guys once again here that watch a lot of tape, and it doesn't get anything better than that. So it's obviously you saw the difference in opinions that we all had there on that show on Wednesday. There, I think we're probably gonna have some more differences today as well too. So it should be a good hour here. I'm excited.
Yeah, I am as well. And I think what's so interesting, and I think the conversation Wednesday proved it, is that the quarterback rankings this year are so different from person to person. None of us have identical rankings, and oftentimes they're pretty different from each other. So I guess I'll start with this. Jonathan, I'll go with you first. Do you have a set of quarterback rankings, like a top 3 or top 5? Just list the names, because I'm just curious to see exactly how you stack up this class next to each other.
Yeah, so kind of going through it over the last few weeks, I really kind of wanted to dive in a little bit more. And I posted that recent film room kind of highlighting Malik Willis and how he compares to other small school raw prospects coming out in the last few years. And I kind of just got to the point, going through more tape in 2020 as well as 2021, just looking at the upside, looking at the traits compared to the other traits of this class. And normally over the last few years with guys like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and obviously the jury's still out on a guy like Trey Lance, but you're seeing a lot more teams bet on the traits rather than betting on the safe player. So over the last little bit, I've kind of jumped Malik Willis to my quarterback 1 overall, just because if you have a system and you have an offensive coaching staff that can, build this kid up in terms of his mechanics and, be able to highlight those strengths as a passer while being able to manage those deficiencies, I think that he has the highest ceiling, and, he can be that top 5, top 8 quarterback in the league should he be able to capitalize on the immense skill set that he possesses. So I'd probably have him 1. And then it's tough because I know that I was kind of a fanboy along with Tyler about Desmond Ridder. So him and Howell are probably in that next bucket for me personally. If I had to go based off of what I see now, I would probably say Howell may have a higher ceiling, but I would say that Ridder is more ready to go right now. I think that Howell has the traits that you're looking for, but you also see those deficiencies in terms of accuracy, poor judgment at times. And those are there with Ridder too. So if I had to go about it today, though, based off of Pittsburgh, I'll keep Howell 2 just based off of his upside. I'd probably keep Ridder 3. I'd go Matt Corral 4, and I'd go Kenny Pickett 5.
Okay. Well, what were your rankings coming out of the Senior Bowl?
Coming out of the Senior Bowl, I was still high on Ridder, but I was higher on Howell just because of the way that the deep ball looked and just his overall arm talent. Dave, you obviously have mentioned, his ability to make all the NFL throws, and we've seen it, especially going back to his 2020 tape, which I saw and I did during his summer scouting series, and then being able to compare that to 2021 when I did his draft profile for the site. Obviously, there's differences there, but you just look at his mobility as a passer, you look at his mobility as a runner, and obviously he needs to learn to be able to get down. But you do like to see that scrappiness where it's like he's going to be able to win with his legs as well as with his arm. And that's what you're seeing in the NFL quarterbacks nowadays. Like Josh Allen is a very effective runner. You look at Patrick Mahomes, he was not as accomplished or prolific as a passer this year and as in years past, but he relied a lot more on his legs as a passer this year. And that's what you do see with Howell on some instances, as well as the thing is with Howell, like him and Corral both come from RPO heavy systems, both play very similar offenses. But the thing is with Howell, you look at, just the durability concerns. Obviously, you see Corral being able to get down more in his college game, and obviously Howell needs to learn that. But you just have a guy that's 15 to 20 pounds heavier, has a more stocky, sturdy frame, was able to stay healthier for longer at North Carolina, taking the beating that he took with a down team this year, versus a guy like Corral, who's already coming off of 2 bad ankle injuries. I believe he had a really bad shoulder injury earlier in his career. I just look at that, longevity prospect that you have to consider. So I kind of throw that in a little bit with Howell's analysis, as well as just, the powerful arm and the ability to make all the throws. So that's why I kind of lean on him possibly, you know, being that second quarterback for me. And then him and Ridder are like neck and neck for me as it is. And then I would probably have Corral. Then I would have Pickett.
Tyler, same question to you. Do you have a top 5 rankings? I just kind of want to set the groundwork for your overall thoughts and kind of lead the conversation from there.
Yeah, so my number one, which was different from, you know, our pre-Senior Bowl, is Willis now. His obviously arm talent is through the roof, and his, you know, playmaking ability is insane. And then his elusiveness is, I think he's the one guy that, you know, we can talk about mobility for just about every single one of these top 5 guys. But he's the one that you're truly going to be like, okay, that's going to translate to the next level. Everybody else is kind of like, okay, it's functional, it's there, but I don't think it's going to be something that they're going to be able to lean on too heavily other than, you know, some scrambling at the next level, where I think Willis, you know, that can be a strong part of his game. 2, I have Ridder, which he was someone that I came in. I was actually lower on him before the Senior Bowl, and once I saw him in person, how his mechanics were and everything, it really kind of made me step up and see him as you know, a guy that can be that QB2 in this class. I think he can make all the throws as well. Then I have Pickett, which I think Pickett, you know, I've fallen off on him a little bit, and I think that's more so just because I think right now he is what he is, where these other guys all think have, you know, some growth left to them, you know, some more than others, but Pickett's definitely the one that I see, like, you're drafting what you see here on tape at the moment. So that's kind of where you have his safe, quote unquote, safe guy there at 3. And then kind of, I mean, 4A and 4B, honestly, for Corral and Howell, I think they're very, very similar players. Obviously, you know, as Jonathan mentioned, you know, Howell's obviously more thick. But I mean, they ran those very similar systems. They both have extremely strong arms, but I think they have, you know, similar issues in terms of just because of the systems they came out of, whether it be, you know, being locked on their first reads. And then after the first read, it gets very murky for both those guys. And that's kind of why I'm lower on them than most.
Who was your number 1 quarterback prior to the Senior Bowl? You said that changed post Senior Bowl.
Yeah, so it was Pickett, just because I thought he was very clean. And I think that's kind of where I kind of started to think from, you know, I drew away from Pickett just because of how much I saw his ceiling already being hit. And I take being able to grow after going to the NFL much higher now as I go along the process.
Gotcha. I would say it sounds like maybe the most polarizing name in our conversations, both on Wednesday and today, has been Desmond Ridder. Some people have him. You guys have him 2. I think Dave and I have him 5. And Dave was in my DMs last night at like 1 a.m. showing me photos of Desmond Ridder's game. So Dave, just give me your thoughts as you kind of went back through Desmond Ridder. And then obviously I want to talk to Jonathan and Tyler to talk about the positive of him, because it sounds like that's a guy that's quote unquote gaining first round buzz, maybe a first round pick, but has certainly some detractors and some people that really think this guy can play.
Look, you know me, if I get on a position, and here's the thing, this is the deepest quarterback dive I've done since I think the Rudolph year because out of necessity, right? I mean, we only have so many hours during the process to watch so much tape, and you tend to go more what you think the Steelers are going to draft and all like that. So obviously this time around, I've spent more time on the quarterback tape and started early in the process. But I find myself keep going. I want to go deeper. I want to go deeper. I want to go back to this guy. And I've effectively worked all the way back around all 5, 2 full times in total. And I watched 10 games last night of Ridder. And because it had been a while since I watched him. I don't get it, guys. I don't get it at all. That inaccuracy is mind blowing. That Indiana game last year, my God, he should have had a couple more interceptions in that game. The Alabama game goes without saying. The pass knockdowns in that game, just throughout his tape, the pass bat downs in total there. Can he make some good throws? Yeah, he can make some good throws, and he had to, because you're not going to get that program where they were at, winning the games that they were winning over these last couple seasons without it. Now, another thing that drove me crazy about him too is he seems to be he tries to put too much touch on a lot of his throws instead of just drill them right in there. Now he can make the far hash throw there, but you kind of grit your teeth a couple of times when he does do that. I guess what I'm getting at here now at this point, I told Alex, I got to be honest. Last night, I told Alex last night, there's no way you could you get me to draft him, especially not in the first round. I'm there's just no way. So with that, you guys tell me what I'm missing with Desmond Ridder, because I must be missing something.
Tyler, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the main things I've seen with Ridder too, which I was just kind of alluding to earlier with the ceiling and things like that. I think Ridder is probably the only guy, other than maybe Pickett, just because he had his insane senior year, that was consistently, his arrow was pointing up throughout basically his entire career. So in my mind, I see him as consistently improving from, say, his 2019 tape to 2020 tape to 2021 tape. There's always things he was cleaning up consistently. Where, I mean, even Pickett, for example, I think actually throughout the year, kind of as the season kind of tailed off, I thought he got worse. Whether it be the Miami game, the Virginia game, those were really things that I saw from Pickett that I didn't like. But with Ridder, I think as the season went on and even as games went along, I think his arrow started to point up. He starts off games actually very, very shaky. I think Notre Dame is actually one of the bigger ones of that, where I don't know if he comes up too amped up. I'm not really sure. But I think he's consistently better throughout games throughout the season. So that's one thing that I always think he's consistently getting better, and he fixes those things. In general, I mean, I think he has the cleanest mechanics in the class, honestly, in terms of his drop back. And when he's throwing off a rhythm, I think it's the cleanest in the entire draft class, honestly. And then I think the other thing is just the overall offense he's running too. He is probably, I mean, maybe Pickett has some RPOs too, but he's the one guy in this class too that I think has the biggest mix of RPOs and attritional offense. That he's actually reading things pre-snap and that's not RPO based, and then actually throwing them in the game. So. Those are my biggest things. I mean, his deep ball, I think, is definitely underrated, as you alluded to, Dave. I mean, I think he does try to aim some of those deep balls, which leads to him to floating it too much. But in terms of his rollout is another thing where if you get him on the run, I'm not saying out of structure, but in terms of like a bootleg or something like that, that's much cleaner than say Pickett. When we're doing like. I think when he throw his arm strength in that way is great as well when he's on the run. He can throw those balls down the seam. I mean, I think everything is there for me. He just needs to put it all together, and I think that's basically what the same conversation you have for Willis. I'm not saying he is Willis. He's not going to be as dynamic as him. But I think the other thing is he's pretty safe with the ball for the most part. He does take chances. And his inaccuracy does get him in trouble. But at the same time, I mean, what guy in this class isn't, I think, inconsistent with his accuracy? I think almost every single guy in this class is inaccurate on a game-to-game basis from time to time. And I think that's something that, I think people seem to be hounding Ridder for, where I don't see people hounding Corral and Howell for their inaccuracies from a game to game too, which I've seen through the games I've watched. So, I mean, at this point too, I want to say too, I think this whole class is basically picking the lesser of all evils, which is so annoying to me.
Yeah, it's Malik Willis and everybody else, really. Is what.
But there's evils with him too. I mean, obviously,
right.
He has the elite traits, but this basically like, all right, which guy is going to give me the least trouble at this point? Right. And that's troublesome.
Jonathan, you want to take over the defense of Ridder there?
Absolutely.
I'm not seeing it, man. I'm telling you. I like some of the back shoulder. I think he does he might be the best back shoulder thrower I've seen so far when it comes to these five. But man, I watched a ton of tape last night, man, and I got more aggravated the more I watched.
What are two or the three biggest things that aggravated you, Dave?
Just the accuracy. Just off the chart inaccurate. Down the seam, wide open guys throwing behind them. The Notre Dame game, I think, is evidence of that. I don't see the arm strength everybody else sees. He can put it out there, but a lot of times it seems more floated than everything else. And yeah, he's not afraid. He's a you only live once kind of. He's not afraid to take chances with the football down the field. But a lot of those chances are just, in my opinion, poor decisions. He should have had. I stopped counting. He should have had at least 10 more interceptions from what I saw.
Interesting. Yeah, I will say from the accuracy standpoint, like I do agree that he either tends to airmail passes over the receiver's head or he will put it short, in which case the defensive back can undercut the route. But when I was watching guys like obviously Malik Willis in that game versus Ole Miss, like he had a lot of bad decisions, a lot of bad ball placements because he wouldn't step into his throw. And then I can't tell you going back and doing Ty Chandler's report from 2020, 2021, the running back from North Carolina, how many times I watched Sam Howell skip passes into the feet of the receiver or airmail the pass as well too. And while, Matt Corral's often been compared, saying that he has the best accuracy in this class in terms of a quick compact release, even on RBOs where it's all like timing based, you're seeing a lot of misses there. So I do agree that there are accuracy issues with a lot of the quarterbacks in this class, much like Tyler said. And I do agree that Ridder does show those. It is frustrating. But I also think that, it's a mechanical issue, more specifically with his lower half. After listening to a couple podcasts with his, QB coach Jordan Palmer, as well as watching some like interviews with Jordan about Desmond Ridder and the training that they've been doing, and just how, his feet in the pocket just need to be more consistent. And obviously, like, you have to improve that. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that all these quarterbacks need to work on their mechanics, if it be their upper or lower half in some way, shape, or form to improve that overall accuracy. I do agree with you, Dave, that overall the arm strength in terms of velocity and zip on the ball is not there with Ridder compared to other guys like Howell or like guys like Willis. But he does have the ability to throw it with the dropping it in the bucket or trying to get the touch passes 50 to 60 yards down the field, which does say something in itself as well too. Again, are they always accurate? No, but I do agree that, there is instances of arm strength going back to Georgia last year where he runs the opposite hash, turns, fires, gets drilled in the face, and is able to complete the pass for a touchdown in the end zone. Or there's other instances where he shows great touch on the ball against Alabama where his receiver fails to bring it in along the sideline, or where he's able to get out, roll out of the pocket because he has that mobility to be able to make those completions. I'm not saying that he's like an amazing, like high-end, like ceiling quarterback. I do compare him though, stylistically, as well as personality and just like, as a leader and character to what Marcus Mariota has kind of come to be. Whereas, Marcus Mariota coming out was the number 2 overall pick, started at Oregon, took him to the college football playoff. A lot of those similar accolades with Ridder, a tall but slender frame, very mobile, but, isn't this dynamic dual threat quarterback, but can definitely create outside of structure with his legs, and has a good arm, not a great arm. But I think those two players are very comparable. So, Marcus Mariota was the number 2 overall pick. Does that mean that, Ridder should be that? No, absolutely not. But if we go back and do a redraft of that draft, you'd probably say that Marcus Mariota probably shouldn't have gone number 2 overall anyway. Was it the system that he played in with Tennessee that caused him to fizzle out? Was it just that the fact that he never developed? Who knows? But I think that Ridder is very similar in that sense, where he can provide steady play as a leader, as a person that has the intangible traits that you look for, much like, Josh Carney talked about how he loves that he's a leader. He's a born winner. My friend Jeremiah Ortiz works for the strength conditioning staff, keeps me in tab with Ridder, as well as all these other guys at Cincinnati, just says that this guy is continually pushing day in, day out to get better on the field, get better in the weight room, get better in the classroom, all those different things to make the necessary changes to be an NFL starting quarterback. Whether he develops into a high-end starter or an average guy, who knows, who's to say? But I do see the intrigue with Ridder, and that's why I would have him kind of in the mid-tier of my list.
Now, look, I don't have any problems with his other, his off the field, his leadership. I mean, as Alex has said several times, to get that, to take that program where it is to where it is now, to win the amount of ball games that he's had, that he's done. He's a fun. I don't hate the kid. People are going to frame this. Oh, Dave hates, Dave hates Desmond Ridder. That's not it. I watched the tape, man, and I just got I get frustrated when I watch his tape. Alex, let's circle back to what I've said in my deeper dive rewatch compared to what your thoughts are on him.
Yeah, if I could just interject one thought on Ridder, I understand the what Palmer's talking about, working on mechanics and cleaning stuff up and finding consistency. If this was a 1-2 year starter, I would buy that more, but this is a 4-year starter, a guy that started, I don't know, 40 plus games in his Bearcats career. He shouldn't be having these mechanical issues, these consistency, the let's clean stuff up. That should be reserved more for the Malik Willis, a raw guy who has not played as much football. So he's talking about a 4-year guy. I just would expect that guy to be a lot cleaner, a lot more consistent, a lot more accurate overall. It wouldn't need to be trying to fix some of this stuff that seemed to be pretty big issues to me.
But do you guys have anything to say about the fact that he came out as a very small school guy in terms of where I feel like someone like Howell and Corral, basically they probably got these trainings in high school where I think if you start with Ridder as much more raw in general, even though he was a 4-year starter, you have a guy like Howell and Corral who were, they're very, highly sought after prospects where they've been taught and probably had the best trainers since they were in junior high. Like, I
mean, they did still start at 4 years in college. I don't know, at a Power 5, well, not Power 5, but FBS level school. I can't shake that. They still having those issues.
I get that. I mean, I argue too. I think I'm curious you guys don't see the arm strength because I've seen throws. I know there was one against Tulsa where he puts one on a line. I think it was like 45 yards right down the seam. It goes, two guys' angles are ruined and it doesn't end up getting caught because the guy drops it. But I mean, there's definitely throws on his tape that, he rockets balls over the middle. There's some cover 2 hole shots in there that, he's throwing it on a rope. More so than some other guys I've seen in this process. I mean, again, he's not Willis by any means.
Right.
But I definitely see the arm strength probably more than you guys, I guess.
Alex, you wouldn't draft you wouldn't draft Ridder at 20, would you? I mean, you
No, I put a third round grade on Ridder. So I mean, I think he will go much higher than that for the record, but that's just my personal grade on Ridder.
All right, there's no way you could get me to draft him at 20. I assume Jonathan and Todd, you guys would be fine with him at 20.
I would be, yes.
Okay, Jonathan.
For me personally, so this is the scenario I see. Like either they attempt to potentially, like you guys talked about earlier. I think that there's a chance that Malik could fall to 20, but I think realistically that they would probably try to move up if they think that Malik Willis is their guy. If he's not their guy, I could foresee it based off of the due diligence they're doing in the quarterback position to potentially take either a guy like Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder. They're at 20. And depending on the other names available, we're talking about guys like Derek Stingley, Kyle Hamilton, Jordan Davis, all falling there. If you don't while I do agree, like Ridder, I don't think that maybe he would be that much more sufficient at his high end ceiling compared to guys that are already on the roster. So I would much rather invest that pick into a premier position or a premier player that falls a little bit in the draft. And then maybe look to see what falls there, because are all 5 of those quarterbacks going to be off the board come 52? Potentially. I mean, it definitely is a possibility. But if not, you can go ahead. If they're not your guy, I don't know if I'm that high enough to say I would definitely take Ridder or Corral over X player. So that's where I would probably look at the board, see who's there, and see what value is there. If I don't think that, Ridder can be going forward more than that high end player like Willis and has shown us to be, then I would probably wait. I mean, I would be fine and I could stomach taking him at 20, but I would like to see the value there as well.
I must have got some bad tape. I got to check my YouTube machine or something, I guess.
I just think if the framing is we can stomach Ridder at 20, that's not the way a franchise quarterback needs to be drafted. It has to be this is our dude. We're thrilled. We think we really just hit a home run here.
I think that's the problem about this whole process, though.
Sure, I think
anyone other than Willis, I'm gonna be not ecstatic about. But
that's fair.
Yeah,
sure. And look, I miss. I mean, we all miss, right? I mean, sometimes I don't see it, and I just am not seeing it with him. Let me ask you this before we end the beat up Desmond Ridder portion of the podcast. Who is the least mobile quarterback of the 5
Ooh.
Five that we're talking about. Who is the least mobile?
I mean, they're all fairly mobile, but I understand who is the least of that
Right.
group. I would say Pickett probably, but
Yeah,
I mean, they
yeah.
all can move. I mean, no one's the mobile kind of guy.
Yeah, I was going to go Pickett as well.
It's
I mean,
probably
I think
Pickett or
Ridder.
Corral.
I think Ritter's mobility is actually overrated. I'll say that. I think he's quick. He's quick, like in the pocket with like sidestepping and things like that. But he's not really dynamic much. I mean, he obviously can run, like when he gets in the open, but he's not very quick, which is, when you have guys bearing down on you, that's what makes it tough on him for that. So I want to point that out.
Yeah, and to Tyler's point, you're right. If you're not excited about a quarterback, don't take him. And that's why the two guys I get super excited about are Willis and Corral, and those are probably the two guys that I would take. So I think that's a fair point there. I do want to talk.
I'm not done, Jonathan. Did you
okay.
say who is least mobile?
Yeah, so I was gonna probably say it was between probably Ridder and probably. I would say Pickett's probably the least mobile. Obviously, he showed us all the fake slide action, obviously, in that championship game that they played. But, like, when I did Ridder's profile, I noticed that, he can run. I mean, he ripped off a 75, 80-yard run against SMU.
Yeah, 91. I think it was a 91-yard run against SMU.
Yeah, it was a freaking long run.
Yeah.
And it's just like he has that ability, and he can do it, much like, I talked about Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota is a very good runner as well, too. But it's just like he's just not that – like – he doesn't play to that time 4.5, 4.49 speed that he showcased at the NFL Combine. But at the same time, I will kind of be able to defend him a little bit here. Don't kill me, Dave. But, I will defend him here and say he wasn't asked to do that a lot in the system that he ran at Cincinnati, utilizing him and his legs. I would be very intrigued to see what Ritter's, overall makeup would look like if he played at a North Carolina or he played at an Ole Miss, where he was like called upon to use his legs more rather than maneuver in a pro style offense, be able to, which, featured Jerome Ford, the running back, who I hope to do a profile here soon for the site, as, just this team that's going to play great defense, control time possession, make sure they're not wasting drives. I would like to see what he would have been like if they would have utilized his legs more. But I think going forward into the league, I think Kenny Pickett has the least in terms of mobility. Like, I think he's very good at creating outside the pocket as a passer, but I don't think that he's a guy that you want to carry the ball, 5 to 10 times a game.
Okay, I have my trap almost half set here. Okay. Can we all agree that Ridder is no better than fourth on the list of mobility of these five quarterbacks?
Is no better than fourth?
Right. I mean, would he, in other words, second worst, no better than second worst?
I would say it would be interesting because obviously we put Pickett last, me and Tyler did, but then I think the conversation between Ridder and Corral, while Corral ripped off a lot of, he did really well in the system and was asked to run a lot. It's like, is he ripping off those crazy long runs? He's finishing with contact, yes, but it's just like, are you wanting Corral to run more, or are you running to have Ridder run more is going to be the question I would pose that.
All right. I have Corral as a better runner. And I think Tyler does as well, too. So I think you're going to get overruled here that at best, Ridder is the fourth mobilest quarterback on this list of five. Now, who is the most inaccurate quarterback in these five?
Probably go Willis.
Yeah.
Most inaccurate? Really? Willis? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he missed a ton of throws.
All right.
I mean, Ridder, again, would probably be second on that. But I think it's a mixed bag with Corral and Howler. I think you guys overrate them, honestly, in terms of how accurate they are.
Okay. Jonathan, most inaccurate of the five?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at just this season alone, like I think Willis and obviously Sam Howell are kind of almost identical when it comes to overall accuracy as quarterbacks, like looking from a completion percentage standpoint. But I think that, watching the film, watching the traits, I think they all have their inaccuracies, but you want to see those middle of the field, those gimme throws. And that's where I would probably say, Willis will make those plays, like you said, oh my God, but he'll also make those, oh my God, like what just happened? So like, I think that it's kind of a toss up at this point, but in terms of accuracy with like, I'd probably throw in guys like Willis, Ridder, and Howell in that bucket. And then, it just kind of depends on where they're trying to target in terms of quadrants of the field. where you see those inaccuracies.
Okay, well, y'all did your best to try to keep Ridder in the talk here. Okay.
I do want to discuss the guy who still may be the first quarterback taken in this class, Kenny Pickett. We haven't talked about him a whole lot. He may be the first quarterback taken by the Carolina Panthers, 6 overall. I know it doesn't sound like any of us on Wednesday or today are super high on Kenny Pickett, but I'm just curious, what is the big flaw in this game? Where can he get better at? Because certainly this guy, we saw what he did for Pitt, had a great season, a 40-touchdown campaign for the Panthers this year, led him to an 11-win season. Tyler, I'll start with you. Just your overall thoughts on Pickett, the good and the bad.
Yeah, so I mean, Pickett's obviously. I think he's up there in terms of the most accurate in the class. I mean, I think if you're talking about straight up accuracy, I think Carson Strong's the most accurate guy in the class, which we haven't talked about. But I think with Pickett, I mean,
he's trolling me, isn't he, Alex?
with Pickett, I mean, like I said, I think where his drawback to me is that his ceiling is pacily hit right now. I don't think you're going to see him come in the league and light it up. It's going to be, he is what he is right now. And he obviously he can make full field reads. He does all those progressions well. He actually does pretty well, creating out of structure, which I don't think gets talked about enough with him. But it definitely his arm strength is what really worries me with that. Now we obviously just saw Joe Burrow come out, who had didn't have the strongest arm either. But I also don't think Pickett is Joe Burrow. So
Joe Burrow really surprised me this past year with his deep ball down the side. Of course, it doesn't hurt to have that Chase on the other end of that. But he really surprised me with his development of his deep ball in his second season. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, with Pickett, I mean, most of his deep balls that I thought were his better deep balls came, inside the hashes. They had a lot of deep posts. Really, actually, like tight split posts. Actually, was honestly probably his best throws. He also had some corners and stuff like that too. But where I think he really shines is the intermediate routes. I mean, that's where he has the most zip on the ball. He can throw it across the middle. He's quick with his progression. He always knows where his check down is. I think that might be, actually a drawback sometimes. I think he does take the check down too quickly sometimes. But I think he's going to be a guy that, and he also takes some chances too. And I think he got lucky a few times. One of the biggest things I think was it's always on his highlight tape I see is the game-winning throw against Virginia, where it was basically just Jordan Addison completely making the best play on the ball possible by coming back to it. Probably should have been a pick to end the game against Virginia. And I think Pickett got lucky a few times just by having, one of the best receivers in the league. But that's always helpful too, to have. But with Pickett, the biggest drawback with him in terms of coming to Pittsburgh for me is just the fact that if you're drafting Pickett, he's obviously the oldest guy in this class. I think, do you really want to draft Pickett and have him sit here? And that's kind of where it's a drawback to me. If you're drafting Pickett, I think you're closer to, a win now team. And, or, you guys talked about before with Matt Rule being in a situation where if you're going to draft a guy, you need him to start right now, and not have him sit here because you might not be there.
Jonathan, are you worried about some of the things that Tyler mentioned in terms of the age? That Tyler didn't mention it, but the hand size obviously gets talked about a ton with Kenny Pickett, 8.5-inch hands. What are some of the biggest flaws in this game?
Yeah, I just see like a guy that is obviously had a great season this year, but I question how much is he just maxed out, especially when you take him from a team like Pitt, who frankly the ACC was kind of down in terms of talent and overall play this year compared to years past, with Clemson not being the superpower that it once was with Trevor Lawrence gone. So my question is like, okay, the competition, going through when, Pitt was kind of one of the more dominant teams in the conference, how much he was benefited, like guys like Jordan Addison, like Tyler said, as well as just, like what Tyler talked about. He was very good in the short and intermediate parts of his game. He makes full field reads. His ability to maneuver in and out of the pocket is good. But at the same time, like some of the inconsistencies, how they would run the same play over and over again if it wouldn't work right away. His inaccuracies as a passer, overthrowing his receiver, underthrowing his receiver, having it where he would not maneuver the pocket and not be able to locate a receiver on the break of his route. Like, that's some of those questions that I have. And I just question how maxed out he is at this point, transitioning from college to the pros. And, that's where I think that Tom got a lot of flack on it for this past podcast, saying that, I see him as career backup. I think that he definitely can be a starting caliber player, but the upside is not there where, in a couple years, you may be looking for another option to potentially unseat him. That's where I get the comparison I did in a film room a while back of Teddy Bridgewater, coming out of Louisville. I think it might have been AAC at that point. They might have been ACC. But you look at just the bump in play that, Teddy Bridgewater had in his last season at Louisville, much similar to what Kenny Pickett had in his last season at Pittsburgh. And you just look at the same style of player. You look at, that passer, that guy that can maneuver inside, outside the pocket, isn't like completely mobile though, in terms of being able to be a dual threat with his legs. And you just look at the size comparisons. Like, Teddy Bridgewater came out a little over 6'2", 214. Kenny Pickett stands at just a shade under 6'3", 217. Has a similar athletic testing measurables, similar arm and hand size. So it's just like, would you be comfortable drafting Teddy Bridgewater top 10 overall? And I'm not saying that's a one-for-one comparison, but I'm making the comparisons to say that's kind of like the caliber and ceiling of player you may be looking at with Kenny Pickett going from Pittsburgh to the NFL.
I get that.
Our University of Pittsburgh demographics have taken a big hit.
Well, Dave, you have Pickett second on your quarterback list or third? Where do you have Pickett?
Second. Here's the best one. I'm trying to think of a best way of an analogy that I've never used before with Pickett in all the talks that we got. Kenny Pickett is the Pizza Hut of quarterbacks. Okay.
Good in the 90s? Trying to find where that analogy is coming from.
He is, Pizza Hut does not have the best pizza, right? But when you order up Pizza Hut, in a hurry, you know what you're going to get. It's an edible pizza. You know what to expect every time. There's, it fills you up. There's sort of the comfort that goes along with that. And on the way of it being ordered, you're like, man, why did I order Pizza Hut? But when it got there and you eat it, you think, okay, I'm fine by having it. He's just, there's the comfort factor, I think, in Kenny Pickett that you kind of know what you're buying when it comes to him. And I think you're buying yourself a guy that, can probably win you some games, probably be a 4, 5, 6 year starter in there. Probably nothing fantastic. You're going to have a defense to go along with him. But, that's kind of my feeling on him. And look, it's quarterback class overall is not great. I don't know how many times we got to say that there. But that's kind of my thoughts on Kenny Pickett. It's just the safeness factor of him, I guess.
What round grade, if you have one, would you put on Pick? Because it just doesn't sound like Pizza gets a first round grade from you.
I mean,
is it second?
It's all relative to where you're at, right? I mean, or
well, no, just in terms of the grade. Just in terms of him as a prospect, is he a first round talent, regardless of the class and the strength?
Regardless of the class, I'd probably put him second round.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I put a second round grade.
Late first, early second type.
Would you take him at 20? I guess is the question I should more directly ask.
To me in this class, it's really come down to it. If I can get Malik Willis, I'd be excited about it. Any of the other four, not so much so, really.
So it sounds like no, because if you're not excited about it, then you don't take that guy.
Right.
I will say in Pickett's favor is that, like, and this is the common thing with him, but like he's run the most pro style offense. Like even Desmond Ridder, kind of ran more pro style concepts, but only had 8 snaps under center this past season. Like Pickett ran a ton under center, a lot of motion, a lot of shifts, a lot of audibles, had a great OC, a former NFL coach, and Mark Whipple, Ben's first quarterback coach back in 2004. So like, this guy can run an NFL system. Other guys who are more projects, they got to work on getting away from under center and doing that with speed and still reading defenses while being under center. It's a different world. Even knowing today's NFL game is primarily shotgun 80% of the time, you still got to be under center some, especially in Pittsburgh, where Matt Canada wants their guy to be under center probably more than 20% of the time. So like, that like Pickett's going to be able to run a Matt Canada design offense.
Right. Do you get my analogy though on it?
Yeah, I do. You're basically saying like he's fine, he's good, but not great. He's just Pizza Hut. Yeah, I'm trying to compare. So Malik Willis, what's the best pizza place? I guess for Malik Willis, wouldn't be a chain, I'm assuming.
Italy's finest, I guess, because just kind of, man, I really kind of crave that New York, style pizza and all like that. It's something that you kind of crave, I think.
And then Ridder is Papa John's. I'm trying to find a comparison to Ridder.
Ridder is Domino's at this point. Yeah.
Oh, don't do Domino's dirty.
Oh, man, Domino's.
Look,
Yeah.
Oh,
Domino's
you crossed the
rebranded.
line.
That rebrand did them well.
Stop. No. Look, I used to manage a Domino's. All right.
Did you?
Mean, yeah.
Don't besmirch the good name of Domino's.
Huh? Their pizza back in the 80s.
Don't date yourself.
With the Noid, I mean, their pizza was much better than it is now. Much better than it is now. That's crap, man. I'd order Pizza Hut 10 times before I'd order Domino's.
I lived off of Domino's in college, partly
If we
because
draft
there was no
Ridder,
Pizza
I'll
Hut.
have to buy Dave a Domino's hat.
Done.
Look, don't let Ridder fall out of the first round. All right, don't let him, because you're not gonna hear the end of it. All right.
Any other final thoughts? I think we covered the quarterback conversation.
I want they listened to the show the other day, and my thoughts on. I want their thoughts on your thoughts on Corral, and their thoughts on my thoughts on Howe. Does that
Okay,
make
Jonathan.
sense?
Corral and Howe just kind of give me the skinny, because I want to get to some other prospects as well. But give me Corral and Howe.
Okay, so kind of going off of your thoughts on Corral, going back through his tape a little bit before coming on here, I do agree with a lot of the same things that you said, Alex, going through it. I think that his quick, compact release, his fiery energy, just what he was asked to do. Like, that's the thing with Corral and Howell. It's just like, it's a lot of projection as it is with Willis going to the league, just because of what they were asked to do versus what they actually can do going forward. Yeah. Because I was going through and there's actually a couple examples going back through that Louisville game where he was making good passes to the sideline. I wouldn't necessarily say if it was a cover 2 hole shot or not, but you saw those, quick releases, those throws to the sideline, getting there with good zip and velocity on the money to the target, making sure that he got the ball there in time before the receiver would fall out of bounds. Like, there was a couple examples in that game, and I do see the intrigue with him. It's just like, just going forward with it, like, the injury concerns that are there with the shoulder, both ankles. You look at, obviously the off the field things, and like, you're never going to judge anyone going through that, but it's like, okay, now you're going from an SEC quarterback to, possibly being the savior of a franchise or being a franchise quarterback going forward. When I did Corral's makeup, I compared him a lot to Zach Wilson, but I also compared his game a lot to Johnny Manziel, just because they have a lot of similar players. They played a very similar system. They have that similar ability to maneuver and be able to create with their legs, but just, Johnny Manziel was not able to make that work going from College Station to the NFL. So my question is, okay, will Corral be able to do that in the same breath? That's where I question his overall upside. I think that he could have that Zach Wilson, Derek Carr. When I watched Zach Wilson last year, I compared to a more aggressive Derek Carr. So I think, you see those similar traits, those similar trends, but just like, is it as clean of a prospect is the question that I have with Corral. And that's where it's just like, it's hard to distinguish, given the system that he ran and, the drop off obviously. And, it's hard to tell. And then with Howell, I definitely see it with Howell. He was the guy that I latched onto first in this process, kind of going with Dave on when he was talking about how he can make every throw in the book. Like, there's moments where he just wows you with his ability to make the throws to the sideline, to make those deep bomb throws. I mean, when he was playing his best ball in 2020, being able to utilize Diami Brown and Daz Newsome, the other weapons that he had at his disposal at North Carolina, there's moments where he looked really, really good. But then there's also moments where it's like he doesn't make a read and he just throws it, and there's a guy that's undercutting the route and he just takes it pick six. And it's like, dude, what the heck are you doing? So and you see those with Willis, you see that with everyone. It's just that's that repeating trend where there is, not that Trevor Lawrence, there's not that Justin Fields, there's not that quarterback that's just like, okay, this is the guy here in this 2022 class that where you just know it. But at the same time, you have to have conviction with your takes. And I just think that, while we put Malik Willis on this pedestal in terms of he has the best traits to bet on, I think that Howell, with his arm talent and as well as his overall mobility as a passer as well as a runner, I think he has those second most traits that you would be willing to bet on going forward.
And just real quick, now this is not breaking news for Pittsburgh, but Adam Schefter just tweeting as you were talking, Jonathan, Matt Corral scheduled to visit next week with the Panthers, Eagles, Steelers, Saints, and Falcons. So very busy next week for Matt Corral. Tyler, your thoughts on Corral and Sam Howell?
Yeah, so Corral has some really fun tape. I mean, he does have some wow factor in him. I know there's a ball against Bama where he spins out of Will Anderson. He reverses out of Will Anderson and launches it. I think maybe like 50 yards.
It was dropped.
Yeah, it was dropped. I mean, there's some wow plays to him for sure. He has some of those cool arm angle throws like Patrick Mahomes type things. I think he has some no looks. I think there was one on a deep over route that he had, and those are cool. I mean, those are cool, but it's really with him. I really see the anticipation I've seen from other guys in this class. It's really, there's only so many. I mean, watching his tape, there's only so many, quick pop passes and post corners and sluggos that you can really take watching it. Just like, okay, here we go again. I mean, he did hit the throws, but there's also a good bit that he missed too. I mean, I think in terms of slants, he's probably the best slant thrower in this class, as much as that will take you. He's not afraid to, nail it in there by any means. But that also gets him in trouble too. I think I've in my notes here, I have cowboy or gunslinger in here because he's definitely not afraid to take chances with that, but it did get him in a lot of trouble. One of the things that I have noted for Corral too was actually the article that Clayton for Steelers Depot put out about the end zone or red zone stats, and Corral came in as easily the worst, I think, in that out of the top 5. And that, I mean, I think that showed on film too. I mean, he took so many chances there. I think when things were condensed, it was a lot dirtier to him. And that's really just kind of speaks to his whole tape. When things aren't there for the first read, he kind of panics and everything kind of speeds up for him. And that's when he gets, and his mechanics get thrown off and gets inaccurate and things like that. I think he's a great college player. But it's difficult to see that projection for me until I actually be able to see it in terms of the processing NFL defenses and having to go through actual reads at the next level.
Yeah, I think that's true. A lot of these quarterbacks, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I mean, that's kind of where I feel like there's so many things in here where we start to tear down one guy and then one of us is sitting back thinking that's exactly what this guy does.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just kind of
we're polishing a lot of turds here.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it really comes down to.
And just to say really quickly, that's a good point about Clayton's study. Kenny Pickett did tremendous in that red zone study. He's great on third down. Like situational football, Kenny Pickett has excelled. So there's something to be said for that, I think.
He's also great on third downs as well. That's another thing that Pickett's really good at.
And how? Am I right about the outside the numbers with Corral? I don't. Where is the tape on it? If you show me the tape on it and it passes, I'm fine. I struggle finding the outside the number stuff with Corral.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen a ton of it either. I mean, most of his stuff was really either middle field or just deep. I mean, that was really his game. But then there's the guys that you're like, well, where's this middle of the field tape? I mean, that's what we were claiming for Ben. So it's like the mix and match of both there. How? I mean, obviously his deep ball. I mean, his deep ball is probably the best in the class. I mean, the way he drops it in the bucket is truly amazing. But that's where with Corral, it was like those RPOs, great, slants, great, and all that stuff. But how it's like after the deep ball, it's like, okay, what do we like here? Obviously, he does have that out of the field. I mean, hash to sideline throw. But I mean, one of those things I think it's funny. The one clip that always gets shown there is that game in the bowl game that he does the hash to sideline throw, and the rest of that game is awful for Hal. I mean, that's what we're basically polishing turds here. But I mean, that's always what drops off to me. Other thing, I mean, I hated how he dropped his head. After his first read too, it was always dropping his head. He bailed from pockets that were still clean. Another thing with Hal too that I want to point out, just 'cause it's different than I could say the same thing everyone else said about Hal in terms of this stuff. But one thing is his weapons weren't awful this year. I mean, they were not Diami Brown, Daz Newsome, but he still has Ty Chandler, who's going to get drafted this year, and he also has Joshua Downs, who next year is probably going to be a day 2 pick. So to say that he didn't have any weapons to throw to, I think is definitely maybe overreaching a little bit. Mm-hmm. His offensive line was awful. I think that is one thing that is not brought up enough. I think another thing with Ridder, his line was also awful as well. That's why people were talking about the Bama game. He was completely overmatched there with that. I'll go off of Ridder. I'm sorry. I have to pound my shoe for Ridder every chance I get. But yeah, with how he has some impressive stuff. But the other thing too that I mentioned before the Senior Bowl actually was his quiet demeanor, and that I just cannot shake that from anything. I mean, when you're viewing a guy as being your franchise quarterback, face of your franchise, is that really who you want? I mean, I think that's maybe I'm overreading it too much, but it's just. I mean, you look at guys that are good in the league. How many of those guys are those quiet demeanor guys? I mean, I don't think there's a ton of them, if any, really. And you're talking about true franchise type quarterbacks.
That's why I hate the Baker comparison, because they're so different personality wise. Could not be more different.
It's like someone in the lab was like, "How can we make this guy the exact opposite, but looking exactly the same?" When you're comparing Baker and him.
He's like the Eeyore of quarterbacks.
Yeah, he does. He always looks sad. For some reason. But I mean, there's good things to his game too. I mean, obviously, I think with the other thing with him is his running game is really over. I think it was over exaggerated this year too. I don't think that's going to be something you're going to be able to see for him. He's not going to be able to truck 20 guys down the field in the NFL. That's just simply not going to happen. I don't think his quickness is going to really translate as much in the NFL either. So I mean, he's going to definitely, he has the ability to scramble. But I would have liked to see seen more of his scrambling used to create, extended plays than I saw from him.
All right. So I think it's a good conversation there. Good jumping off point on the quarterback debate, which will be ongoing, as I said, Wednesday show prior to the draft, after the draft for the next 5 years. We'll talk about this class because it is so all over the place. Last couple minutes we have with you guys. Jonathan, I'll start with you. Just a couple of prospects you profiled recently, some guys on your radar, non-quarterbacks the Steeler fans should know the names of.
Yeah, I've been just kind of going through and just like, okay, let's try and hit like position by position, trying to do as many profiles as possible. So I started out a little bit with the running back. So I kind of went through, talking about Ty Chandler and as well as the guy that Dave's been referencing a lot, Pierre Strong, in their film as Shrine Guys. And yeah, I think that both those guys, I know while we would have to say, oh, the Steelers shouldn't take a running back, possibly in this draft class, there is the need, like if they want to become more of this run heavy, play good defense, control the clock, run the football. I think there's that need to have that like adequate complement to Najee Harris in the backfield. And those are two guys that have really stuck out to me thus far. I hope to cover a little bit more in terms of the running back position. But if there's a guy there on day 3, I would love to see it be either Pierre Strong or Ty Chandler, just with what they bring in the game. I think that, Pierre Strong and his ability to hit the home run, as this kind of like inside zone, outside zone runner that has that speed, that has that ability to make one cut and go, be able to follow blocks really well. I compared his game a lot to Tevin Coleman coming out of Indiana, who had done very, very well in the Shanahan system. I mean, he's been a Shanahan guy starting out in Atlanta, then moving over to San Francisco, now plays for the Jets, all Shanahan based run systems. So I think that Pierre Strong very much fits that role, as well as a guy that had a lot of success last year in terms of Elijah Mitchell, who also came from a smaller school in Louisiana, Lafayette, and really turned it on with the 49ers this past year. So I could see Pierre Strong having a similar type of impact in the league if he gets that opportunity. So, but to say if he could be a compliment to a guy like Najee Harris, it's kind of like the lightning to, Harris's thunder, I think that would be very beneficial. And in terms of Chandler, I know Josh put him on my radar right away after the Shrine Bowl, and I loved being able to go through his profile. Just his ability to, run with power despite being a smaller back. I mean, he wants to run into and through guys despite, his lack of quote unquote size. His ability to make one cut in space and make guys look silly, as well as he doesn't have he tested really well along with Pierre Strong at the combine. I don't know if you see that 4.3 burner speed on film, but you do see the ability of him to be able to get to the second level, see daylight, hit the Jets, and be able to pull away from defenses. And just also the thing that isn't brought up a lot with him is his willingness and pass protection and being a pass catching back, which I think is something that Pittsburgh sorely needs is just his ability to be utilized as a pass catcher. He never had really over a season, I don't believe, over 20 receptions at North Carolina or at Tennessee, but you see that ability for him to be able to carry up the seam, be able to beat linebackers and safeties in coverage, and win as a pass catcher in man coverage, as well as being that check down or screen option in the screen game. So I think one of those two options would be great compliments to Najee Harris, should they be available sometime in day 3.
And then Tyler, same question to you, just some guys you've watched recently, any guys you're super high on?
Yeah, so one guy I would like that's probably a third or fourth rounder, I guess, maybe fourth, fifth, is Max Mitchell from Louisiana. He's a right tackle, probably best suited for right tackle in the league, but he's also probably a swing tackle. He was a guy that played with Kevin Dotson, honestly, at Louisiana. Those Louisiana's had some of the best lines, honestly, in all of college football for the last couple of years here. I think he played with obviously Dotson, and there's another guy, I forget his name off the top of my head.
The Miami
Robert Hunt.
Yeah, Robert Hunt.
There it is. Yeah, there it is. So I mean, he's played along some NFL guys already, and he held his own. He's quick off the ball, as he's great at combo blocks, and he's not as strong run blocking as it is pass blocking. So he kind of fits that Chooks, profile, I would say. But at the same time, you coming from Louisiana, who is one of the best running teams in the nation, he does obviously know how to run block. He's not as big of a road grader as you might expect. But he's a guy that I think can definitely kind of, if you get him, sit behind, Chooks for a couple, year or two, however long Chooks is here, hopefully he can turn into, at least a good depth piece in the fourth round, if not a starter. Really good mirroring, has quick feet and everything like that. I really liked his game. The other thing about him was cool was in the Texas game, he actually was in the middle of drives shifting from left tackle to right tackle. I'm not sure the reason behind it, but he was literally going back and forth throughout that game, which was crazy to me with the difference of footwork there. Another guy that I liked a lot was Kobe Durant, actually, out of South Carolina State.
Yes, let's go.
Yeah. I know, John will like
go cover.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he was a fun little dude. I mean, he's like 5'9". He ran a 4.38. Very quick. He was fearless, really fearless. I have him down there. Fearless and aggressive kind of has. I would love to see him plug and play kind of at a nickel, kind of in that Arthur Marlette role, Mike Hilton role. Just really being able to just use them aggressively in the blitz. I think there's some guys out there that just have it in them that are just, like I said, that fearless with it. They're not going to let up when they blitz. I think that was one thing when in years past, this is how I kind of viewed the nickel position in terms of how the Steelers use it was Sutton kind of being plugged into Hilton's role when he was hurt. And he was just so tentative when he blitzed. He didn't want to like throw his body around and things like that, where this guy will do that to you. But at the same time, he also, I think he had some good coverage skills. He's very aggressive. Like I said, he's not afraid to take chances. And that way I kind of viewed him as like an Antoine Blake study. Which probably puts him right.
Lord, I just went back in time.
That's Valentino Blake to you, Tyler.
You're right. But I don't think his game was bad until he hurt his hand. And that's where he kind of lost that physicality. And he really kind of drew on him. And you were talking about late round guys. I'm not gonna throw out some big names. I think Antoine Blake, is one of those people that you're like, all right, that's a late round corner that you can take a chance on. So that's how I view him. He played well. He showed out against Clemson, which was obviously, when you have a small state SC State guy, that's kind of what you want to look for is them stepping up against those big teams. The last guy I want to talk about was Brian Cook, actually, from Cincinnati. I think he was one of the guys that Mike Tomlin met with.
Yep, he was there. Him, Najee, Najee, Kobe Bryant, and then Des.
Alex, Alex, you're gonna have to let these two guys room together next trip to Mobile, I think.
Yeah, I like Jonathan. Jonathan's a good hype man for Tyler's reports.
I got you. Let's go.
So he's a throwback. He's a throwback safety. I think he'd be kind of, we were just talking about the lightning, the thunder of Najee Harris and Pierre Strong. He'd be, Minka Fitzpatrick's thunder here. He definitely can light people up. He's a downhill safety. He does have some good coverage skills. He can play single high as well. He's a good bit of that at Cincinnati, which, gives him that durability. He's not just a downhill guy, but I kind of relate him to Deshaun Elliott coming out of Texas. A guy just, he's going to come down. He wants to let you up in the run game, but also when you're playing single high, he can come over and light guys up over the middle or on the hashes as well. He has that speed to come over and, light you up, and he knocked a few balls out, that way down the sideline. So he's definitely a guy that, if Steelers so in looking for a safety later rounds of the draft, is a guy that I would definitely like to, take a flyer on.
Yeah, Cincinnati has so much. That's why the whole NFL was at Cincinnati this year, not just because of Ridder. They have so many great, Sauce Gardner and Bryant and Cook and Sanders and Ford. Jonathan mentioned it's a great group overall. Dave, any final questions you want to ask these guys before we wrap up?
Well, I mean, how did the video games work where you do something and unlocks another level and all like that? Didn't Tyler just unlock another hour by?
We could go all day if you let us.
If we want to keep talking about Ridder, I don't know go over.
No, I've had enough of that. I give. Listen, one other question, okay? And obviously going to try to have you guys on maybe one more time before the draft, but give both of you an opportunity right now to call your shot on a player that will be drafted by the Steelers, not in the first round. Now, obviously this is just a huge dart throw overall there, but one guy that you could really see the Steelers drafting, that you think the Steelers might draft after round one.
You want to go first, Tyler?
Yep. Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, Dave, you really, have gotten me on the Danny Gray hype train, man. He's so exciting to watch.
Man, I was wrong on the round on him. They're not going to get him in the sixth or wherever I had him in the sixth round. He's going third or fourth round, I have a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, after seeing where he was on Gil Brandt's list too, I was kind of shocked there. He was ahead of Pickens even, I think, on Gil Brandt's list there. But yeah, I mean, he's exciting. I mean, I think Tom mentioned it too, and I saw the same thing. He really reminds me of Mike Wallace coming out. Mike Wallace was one of my favorite Steelers ever, honestly.
And Danny doesn't body catch as much as Mike Wallace did coming out of the knock on Mike Wallace coming out was a lot of body catches in there too.
Well, Danny Gray, he does catch with his hands. He does have a good bit of drops too, and we actually saw that one day. He's only at the Senior Bowl for one day, which was disappointing. I think he got injured or something happened. He didn't practice the last 2 days, but yeah, I mean, he showed off his speed there, and I mean, I think it's obviously what we've been clamoring for this whole time. Right. So I mean, if he's there, obviously we can get him, and I mean, with Jackson being down there, obviously running through his workouts, that obviously puts a big target on his back as well for the Steelers.
All right, Jonathan.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with a name that Tyler just mentioned, who also had Frisman Jackson there. And I was going to say, I've been kind of jostling with an idea of either Sky Moore or George Pickens being the second round pick for the Steelers at 52 overall. Just as that guy, because they have invested day two capital, let alone that second round pick, a lot over the last couple of years with guys like Chase Claypool. They were Juju Smith-Schuster. James Washington was the third round pick. Deontay Johnson was an early third round pick. So I think that they'll target a day two wide receiver, much like Alex has said in his terrible take, and going into from the past of that. Just, I know they don't fit that study that we talked about in our group DM a whole lot, or I think, yeah, because you said Pickens missed catches, and he also said that he missed a majority of his last season, which, the Steelers haven't technically always done, but just the full presence at that Georgia Pro Day and Frisman Jackson putting Pickens through that workout. And the fact that, he talked with Pittsburgh multiple times, not just once at the NFL Combine, and the willingness to show he is fully healthy and he has that. He's kind of the height, weight, speed specimen, that guy that can take the top off the defense that we've been kind of looking for, that we hope Chase Claypool could be, but necessarily hasn't been. I think that Pickens makes a lot of sense as that guy that has that ceiling, could be that better pro player than he was as a college player. And likewise, the ties to Sky Moore to Pittsburgh are ridiculous. Just talking about, Dino Tomlin, Mike Tomlin being a Shady Side grad, being originally from Pittsburgh, saying that he has conversations with Tomlin, saying that, he would love to have the storybook ending. And, it could end up being a situation like Tyler Boyd a few years ago, where he grew up, went into Pittsburgh and he ends up going to the division rival Bengals. But I just think that there's a lot of ties there, with Sky possibly being the second round pick of the Steelers. But if his draft stock is higher than what, a lot of people are having him as a late first round pick now, I think that him or Pickens make a lot of sense as that Steelers wide receiver they take in day two, let alone at 52 overall.
Pickens will sit your ass down too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think Pickens goes round 2? Because there's some buzz first round, but the injury, the depth of the class, I'm kind of wrestling between. Will he what are the odds he's going to be there at 52?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at receiver trends over the last couple, I can't remember, Dave or someone else posted like the amount of receivers taken before 52 overall in the last few drafts or in the second round. Like it had a spike year. Like I think it was this past year, a year prior, but normally it's like 7 to 8 receivers. And it's like, okay, with Pickens, is he, the 6th or 7th best receiver in this draft class? And you have, the Ohio State guys, you have Jameson Williams coming off the injury, Drake London coming off the injury. You have guys like Sky Moore, Christian Watson, Tyler's boy coming on too. It's like, where does Pickens rank in that, mix? And with receiver, it's all about pick your flavor. Pittsburgh probably either needs a slot guy or a guy that has, speed or can take the top off the defense. Sky Moore brings a little bit of both to that, which makes him a suitable guy to target. But then Pickens is that guy that can play that Z receiver role for Pittsburgh and has that size, that ability to win combative catches. Oh, and he's also a very, very good blocker. So that's where I think that he's probably more of that day 2, 52, around that, top 50, like 50 to 52, but could possibly slip in the 3rd, depending on which receivers go first.
Maybe you could teach the rest of the Steelers to block outside too.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, Jonathan, Tyler. Great insight as always. I think you guys matched what Josh and
what?
That's a compliment. That's good.
Dave, we need a poll after all this. We need a poll.
All right, you can
yeah, we could probably pull. No, look, the thing about it is, once again, it's. Man, I get paid to do this. You get all of us get paid to do what we just did, and that's talk about football, knowing that all 4 of us have watched a lot of tape, and especially when it comes to the quarterback class, I think we proved once again in this show what we proved in the first show with Tom and
Josh. Yeah.
Josh, I'm losing it here. That there's a lot of different opinions on these guys, man, and. We're all over all however many of us, 6 of us are all over the board so far on kind of where we have, these guys at. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong at all. It makes this class a lot of fun. This draft really exciting and frankly unpredictable. So again, thank you guys. We'll try to have you on before the draft. If not, certainly we'll have you guys on again after the draft, and appreciate your time.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our thanks to Jonathan and Tyler for their tremendous insight. A lot of fun there. And I'm saying they matched Tom and Josh, so I'm not making enemies. I'm trying to make everybody happy by saying everyone equally did a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely they do. And it hopefully maybe next week we can get on, I don't know, Devin Jackson and Owen. Maybe that would be probably a pretty good way to kind of round up those guys. But man, how blessed are we, Alex? I mean, to have guys like that do the film study and all, and to be able to sit here and talk about it for an hour there. And those guys,
incredibly,
they eat the tape, and that's all you can ask.
Yeah, definitely. So do you want to mention one list of rankings that we touched on briefly at the end of that conversation, but wanted to kind of delve into more? And Gil Brandt's top 100, his latest updated rankings came out yesterday. And Brandt's, no one's done this longer than Gil Brandt and extremely well respected. He has 6 quarterbacks in his top 100. I'll just read them through here one by one. Malik Willis, his top quarterback, 25th overall. Matt Corral, 2nd. 28th overall, Kenny Pickett 3rd, 30th overall, then a big gap here, Sam Howell 4th, 77th overall, Desmond Ridder 5th, 78th overall, and even EJ Perry from Brown, 85th overall. So strongly cracking.
Dr. Mel Happy?
Yeah, I feel like she ghostwritten this rankings a little bit, but yeah, EJ Perry from Brown, 85th overall. So that's the list there. Some other interesting names as well. Jalen Petre, 24th overall, guy that I've been super high on. Danny Graves, you mentioned, 64th overall in these rankings. Dax Hill, 20th overall, and then Aiden Hutchinson being Gil Brandt's number 1 overall player. So again, interesting list of rankings there from Gil Brandt.
You know how I feel about Gil Brandt. I he's what, 90 now? Didn't he just turn 90? I think. Man, the guy's still. You go back and you look at his rankings year in, year out, especially in the top, I don't know, 100, at least top 100. Man, he's pretty damn close, especially when it comes to kind of grouping and things along those lines. And, is that probably a combination of some of him scouting and probably what he's hearing more importantly now at his age, because he's so well connected now. And he's like the grandfather of it now. People probably trust telling him where they have certain players on their board. And that's probably why he gets the info that he has. So hopefully he'll have that. He's probably got one update left in him, I would think. And look, that means a lot when getting your mock drafts together and all along those lines there. So I know you liked it because there's probably a little bit of confirmation bias, right? With
a little bit.
Him having Matt Corral as his second. Look, Matt Corral grows on you. I mean, he you go back through, and like I said the other day, it's kind of unfair to kind of talk about him, and probably was unfair to talk a little bit more today about Ridder, because you go back through and you watch 10, 12 games and you watch every throw, man. I definitely have Corral ranked higher than Ridder. To me, I don't think it's even close. And once again, we'll obviously see how these quarterbacks go, where they get taken and all, and how their NFL careers go. But I don't know what it is about Ridder. Maybe I'm just missing something there. Now, I do think you're a little hot on Corral. If I had those outside the number throws more to kind of rely on, and all, I'd probably feel a little bit better about him. But he's an RPO guy. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and Brant's ranking some of the similar to mine, but I mean he's a lot higher on Kenny Pickett than I am, 30th overall. And maybe Pickett's a guy that, I should consider giving more credit to, because I'm big on situational football, and Pickett did excel in situational football, red zone, third down, some really impressive numbers there. And so there's something to be said for that, like I mentioned earlier. But again, just goes to show the rankings are all over the map.
Dan Orlovsky used your Alex Smith
oh, really?
With Ridder. Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
Like recently?
Yeah, just the other day.
Took it from me. He took it from me. That's all right.
Look at you.
I'll charge. All right, Dave, let's get to read emails and close out today's show. We have some emails today. We didn't have any on Wednesday's show, so thank you guys for writing in.
Yeah, Ryan Wilson writes in with his quarterback rankings. Love the show. All the work Depot crew puts in all year. He says his quarterback rankings are Willis, Pickett, Howell, Corral, and Ridder. He says, I'll admit I'm a Pitt homer, but I actually think Kenny is quarterback too. He says he has Willis, Kenny, and Howell as round one players. Corral's the second rounder, and he says he wouldn't touch Ridder. He says, despite being a Pitt guy, my preferred option would be waiting and hoping Howell is there at 20, since I think there's a chance he is still there. He says, loving all the coverage and can't wait to hear everyone's opinion there. Let's see. Paul Brown writes in, thanks again to Josh and Tom for the round table. Look forward to the discussion on Friday's show with Tyler and Jonathan. Question one, do you guys have quarterbacks you would not take in the first? Number two, do you believe the Steelers are aware of the status of Tuitt's upcoming season? I know there's some winking and nodding to him wanting to return. You would think at this time there's a plan for either scenario. Question number one. I think I told you today, Paul. I would not take Ridder in round one. I think Alex.
Is there anyone else that you wouldn't take in round one?
I mean, for this class, I think Ridder's probably the only one.
Really? Because you have Pickett number 2, but you're not super high on him. You have like a round 2 grade on him.
I would still take him in the first, knowing the Steelers situation.
Okay, and then even yes for Howell and Corral?
Yeah.
Even though you have a presumably second.
I'm not banging. I'm not standing on it. I mean, we're split. You're asking me about a guy to not take in the first this year. Okay, and this team, I'm looking at it from the Steelers' point of view and the quarterback situation, because if they don't get one this year, we're talking about a 2-year process here. At some point you got to. You got to jump on one, I think.
Sure, but you're saying take the mid-second round guy grade at 20.
Yeah.
Is that? I think some people might interpret that as you're taking a guy.
I would take him. He asked me which ones would I not take this year, and I would not take Ridder. That's where I'm at.
Okay, gotcha. I would say I would not take Pickett or Ridder. Howell, I have an early 2 on. I can maybe stretch that. I would take Willis, Corral. Howell, would not take Pickett or Ridder.
As far as the Tuitt question, it's so hard. It's been hard to read this since day one. We could get past the draft and then they terminate his contract. And with a June 1st designation. I don't know if they know yet on that. And it's just been one giant question mark. And, I would like to think that they know, but I can't say for sure. I mean, I'm right where I was late last season in this. I don't have a good read on this.
Yeah, unless something's changed over the last 2-3 weeks, maybe it has. It doesn't sound like the Steelers know. If they knew, they probably would just say it. Because why? If Tuitt's told them and he's comfortable with that being the decision, then Pittsburgh would just say it. So maybe I don't think they know. I'm not sure when they're going to know, but I don't think they know right now.
Jeff writes in, hey guys, so I'm having trouble getting excited about Willis from the NFL draft profiles. They were higher on Haskins and who is similar but bigger quarterback than Willis. Also, Willis never really had the heavy pressure crowds and situations like Haskins did at Ohio State. So I'm having trouble seeing the value of trading lots of draft capital to get higher in the draft for him. Isn't this just NFL hype / lack of quality quarterback situations? I would much rather wait until next year and bolster the core team now and also see how much Mitch does. What say you? What would you do? Also, would you trade Johnson to Green Bay for a first-round draft pick? He says, I saw an article suggesting it. I don't believe in Johnson and using pick 1B. I don't believe in Johnson and using pick 1B and our fourth wide receiver seems more ideal. First of all, they're not going to get a first round pick for Deontay Johnson. Mm-hmm. If somehow they wound up dealing Deontay Johnson once again, I think it'd be some sort of trade up in the first round situation this year. To me, that's the only way I see Johnson being dealt, period. You would agree, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think the odds of that happening are pretty unlikely. If you could get a first for him hypothetically and you knew you were not going to be able to re-sign him, I would do it, but that's a scenario that's unlikely to play out. And
as far as the whole Willis versus Haskins things, it just goes to the whole ceiling thing once again. The traits versus mixed with the wow, with everything else. Just there's a lot more, in my opinion, intrigue of what Willis can become versus Haskins. So I think it's more of that, man, where can we get this guy to aspect of Willis that's got all the quote unquote NFL hype around him.
Yeah, I understand that they're both pretty raw guys coming out. Haskins didn't play a lot of college ball at Ohio State till that last big run that they had, but I don't really compare the two much beyond that, other than just kind of being maybe more underdeveloped type of guys. But I think in terms of mobility and even some of the high-end plays that Willis made, and even reportedly the work ethic and commitment, stuff like that, all seems to be rosier for Willis than Haskins. So I don't really make much of a one-to-one comparison between the two.
Derek Dimmy writes in, David Alex, what are the pros and cons of RPOs? When you all talked about Corral on Wednesday's podcast, you talked about the large amount of RPO snaps he ran at Mississippi under Kiffin. It seemed like that was an overall negative for Corral's game. At least for some of you, was this a negative because it makes it more difficult to evaluate him? It shows he is decent in some area, question mark, some other reason. He says, also, I think Sam Howell is odds-on favorite to be the Steelers selection in the first round. Thoughts on who you think will be the most likely draft choice in the first round? Look, I mean, probably going to be a quarterback in the first round. And that's why we're having so much quarterback discussion, because I think a lot of us feel confident that the selection is going to be a first round draft pick. So that's why, that's where we're at on that. What about his comments about Corral and a heavy amount of RPOs?
Yeah, well, just the question of the pros and cons of RPOs. I mean, the pros are, you can base it off of box count. There's flexibility. So if defenses want to stack the box or they're presenting a certain look, you can try to make the best decision, not necessarily running into a brick wall. Or if they're playing a lighter box or they're playing too high, you can run the football instead. So there's just kind of more options for your offense pre-snap. I mean, in terms of the negatives, there's more risk to it. Everyone's kind of be on the same page, and you're not totally sure what's going to happen. Once the ball is snapped, and if a quarterback makes a bad decision, you're kind of putting more trust in him to make the right decision. And if he struggles and misses a read, or see something happens, some rotation or some late shift might kind of muddy up that picture and make the wrong decision. Plus, there is the chance of on passing plays, like passing component of RPOs, the risk of the ineligible man downfield. If you try to throw the slant, it's covered, receiver falls down, trips, can't get off the line, whatever the case is. Your offensive line is run blocking, so they're maybe 3-4 yards downfield. They may get called for it. So just kind of a brief overview. Those are kind of the pros and cons.
Once again, if I could find more tape on Corral, throwing some of those cover two hole shots, throwing outside the numbers deep, outside of sluggo, slant go type situations. That's one of the biggest questions I have about him overall. Jason Campbell writes in, hey guys, which is more likely, Steelers trade up for the quarterback of the future, or Steelers draft the next career backup on day 2 or 3? He says, either way, this is probably the last camp for Haskins. Thanks for your great content. I think it's of my two choices, they're more likely to trade up versus draft the next career backup on day 2. I would think that it's more likely they would trade up versus drafting a career backup on day 2 or 3 this year, right?
I would agree.
As far as Haskins' last camp, it's a good possibility. They draft a quarterback, and if they don't deal Rudolph away for something, very good chance this is Haskins' last camp here. Blake Literal writes in, hey guys, Blake Literal or Cam Hayward's burner, as you said Monday. Thanks, Alex, for pretending we can still get Chris Olave. Ironhead Jr. sends his regards, he says. First rounders always have Tomlin and Colbert at the pro day. He says, what kind of line in the sand or connection is there for later rounds?
There is no real strong correlation to the later rounds in terms of Tomlin and Colbert being there, because they go to some of the top pro days for the marquee prospects. Positional coaches have a lot of correlation, especially recently, the last 2-3 classes. A lot of positional coaches and pro days end up being draft picks. Didn't see as many positional coaches on the trail this year. There's still some, and some of them accompanied Tomlin and Colbert on pro day. Like Desmond Jackson did that pretty frequently, so that's worth mentioning. So I would say, I mentioned this before, round 1, look where Tomlin and Colbert went. Rest of the draft, look where the positional coaches went. That's kind of the way I break up the draft.
And also, do not discount the Senior Bowl rosters, the Shrine Bowl rosters, and the NFLPA rosters.
Yeah, especially Shrine and Senior Bowl. And now that the pre-draft visits are back, usually 2-3 names come off of that list. And so that's going to be an important one to cross-reference as well.
Right. Let's see here. Where is it? Where did my list go here? Keto writes in, I got bored today, so I went back and listened to Monday's live stream podcast. You brought up that we know that Devin Bush won't get his 5th-year option picked up, but isn't this situation kind of like the Bud Dupree situation from a few years back? Very little depth behind Bud going in, led the team to give Dupree the 5th-year option when no one thought he deserved it at the time. I may be missing some details that make the situations different, and if so, please let me know why this is different. Look, I think you were the one that didn't think they were going to give Bud the 5th-year option, right? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think I thought there was a chance they wouldn't. It wasn't guaranteed back then, though, right? Or no?
I'm trying to. When did the CBA?
They just did the CBA in 2020, didn't they? So that was before Bud getting the 5th year, was it?
I'm trying to remember. I
thought we had this conversation before where I can't remember if that was for. I want to say Bud. It wasn't guaranteed when they picked it up.
It says beginning with the 2018 first-round draft picks, the 5th-year salary is fully guaranteed when the option is exercised.
And Bud was 2016, 2015, wasn't he? So,
right.
But I mean, his 5th-year option wasn't picked up until post 2018. So was that grandfathered in, or? I'm still needing a little clarity
beginning
on
with
that.
the 2018 first round draft picks, the 5th year. So you would have to be in 2018 or later to for that to be a thing. And Bud was drafted before that.
Okay, so when they picked it up, it was not guaranteed.
It was
so
not
that's
fully
the
guaranteed,
difference between
right?
This and Bush. Okay,
Right. So they could have picked that up and then doped them if they needed to, for lack of a better word. But also Bud earned every bit of that, I thought.
Of what?
After the fact, I guess. But I mean, going into the decision to pick up his 5th year option, he was starting to turn the corner some. And then obviously that after the season after he had his 5th year option picked up, he really turned it on much more, I should say, there. So I'll lay it out this way. There was more. Bud was trending more in the right direction come time for his 5th year option to be picked up than Devin Bush is at this point.
I think that's fair. And then again, the big thing was it was not guaranteed. And that probably eased that decision quite a bit.
Now, I don't think a lot of people would have batted an eye had Bud Dupree not had his 5th year option picked up. I think I was one of the ones that was trending more to the lines that I thought they might. But only because he was trending in that right direction before the decision had to be made on his 5th year option. Then obviously the year at that season after he got it picked up, he was doing fine, and obviously until he tore up his knee in December there. But that, along with if you pick up Devin Bush's 5th year option, it's fully guaranteed, man. And that's like $10 million. So that's yet another reason to think that it's not going to happen, right?
Yeah, the play, the guarantee, the price point, all makes me think that.
Okay, I think we hit it pretty hard. Alex, great show today. I had a lot of fun this week. A lot of fun. And once again, maybe we'll try to get guys like Devin Jackson and Owen Straley on next week to have one more roundtable.
Yeah, sounds good. So we'll talk to you guys on Monday.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button for $25. You can have an ad-free version for the year along with that. So appreciate everybody listening. Happy Friday to everybody. Thanks again to Josh and Tyler for sitting in on this show as well too. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.